Hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline Lacandaso and today I will be discussing Ferdinand Magellan's arrival in the Philippines in 1521, a significant event that marked the beginning of Spanish colonization and had lasting impacts on Philippine history and culture. On March 16, 1521, Ferdinand Magellan arrived in the Philippines, marking a pivotal moment in the archipelago's history. This event initiated a series of changes that would shape the cultural, social, and political landscape of the Philippines for centuries to come. Sino nga ba si Ferdinand Magellan? Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese explorer who sailed under the Spanish flag. He is best known for leading the first expedition to circumnavigate the globe. His journey was part of the broader Age of Discovery, during which European powers sought new trade routes and territories. Spain was particularly interested in competing with Portugal for control of the lucrative spice trade, which was vital for economic growth. Magellan and his fleet arrived in the Philippines on March 16, 1521, landing on the island of Homonhon. This marked the first contact between Europeans and indigenous peoples of the Philippines. Magellan and his crew were in need of fresh water and provisions, and they were greeted by local leaders including Raja Humabon of Cebu. The initial interactions were friendly, with local leaders offering assistance. One of the key events during Magellan's visit was the baptism of Raja Humabon and his wife. Along with many of their subjects, this baptism was not merely a religious act. It symbolized the introduction of Christianity to the islands. Magellan aimed to convert local leaders to Christianity, believing that this would help solidify Spain's claim and influence over the territory. The baptism was both a religious and political maneuver, creating alliances with local leaders. Magellan's arrival was not just about exploration. It was also about claiming new territories for Spain. Upon establishing contact with local leaders, Magellan conducted a formal ceremony to claim the islands. This often involved planting a cross or flag, symbolizing Spanish sovereignty. The act of claiming the Philippines marked the beginning of Spanish colonization, which would have profound implications for the country's political and social structures. The arrival of Magellan was significant for several reasons. Firstly, it marked the beginning of Spanish colonization in the Philippines, which would have profound implications for the country's political and social structures. Secondly, it initiated a cultural exchange that introduced European customs, governance, and religion to the islands. This cultural exchange would lead to the integration of Spanish influences into Filipino societies, shaping the country's identity for generations. And lastly, Magellan's arrival set the stage for further Spanish expeditions and the eventual establishment of a colonial government. The arrival of Magellan led to over 3 centuries of Spanish colonial rule, which profoundly affected the Philippines. The introduction of Catholicism influenced Filipino culture, traditions, and social structures. Spanish colonization also led to the establishment of a centralized government, the introduction of new agricultural practices, and the development of trade networks. However, this period was not without conflict. Indigenous resistance to colonization emerged, leading to the various uprisings and struggles for autonomy. In conclusion, Ferdinand Magellan's arrival in 1521 was a pivotal moment in Philippine history. It initiated Spanish colonization and the introduction of Christianity, which have had lasting impacts on the country's cultural identity and social fabric. Understanding this event helps us appreciate the complexities of Philippine history and the interplay between indigenous cultures and colonial influences.
Sino nga ba si Miguel Lopez de Legazpi? Siya'y pinanganak noong June 12, 1502 sa Sumaragas, Basque, lalawigan ng Gipuzkoa, Espanya. Meron siyang mayaman na pamilya at may mataas na ranggo sa sandatahang lakas at lokal na pamahalaan. Si Miguel ay isang Espanyol na sundalo na kung tawagin ay El Adelantado at El Viejo. Siya ang nag-organisa at nagpangasiwa ng isang ekspedisyon upang sakupin ang mga isla ng Pilipinas sa gitna ng ika-16 na siglo. Miguel Lopez de Legazpi established the first Spanish settlement in the Philippines, San Miguel, in Cebu City on April 27, 1565. The expedition returned to Cebu and landed there. Raja Tupas challenged the Spaniards but was overpowered. The Spaniards established a colony naming the settlements Villa del Santissimo Nombre de Jesus. He signed the Treaty of Cebu with Raja Tupas of Cebu, which established Spanish suzerainty over Cebu. Spain would rule the Philippines over 333 years. The Legazpi Urdaneta expedition arrived in 1565, marking the start of Spanish expansionism in the Far East. Urdaneta discovered and plotted an easterly route across the Pacific Ocean, from the Philippines to Acapulco in the Viceroyalty of New Spain. The route made it practical for Spain to colonize the Philippines and was used as the Manila Galleon trade route for more than 200 years. The Legazpi and Urdaneta expedition was effectively created to the Philippines. The Trans-Pacific Manila-Acapulco Galleon trade, which silver mine from Mexico and Potosi was transported across the Pacific and exchanged in Manila for Chinese silk, porcelain, spices, and other Asian goods precious to New Spain and Europe at that time. Discovery of Urdaneta's route, finding of the Santo Niño icon, and establishment of Huntingdon Grammar School, Great Siege of Malta, the ritual suicide of Ashikaga Yoshiteru. The last is invention of the graphite pencil.
Hi everyone, my name is Aileen Kalinisan and I will discuss my part, which is Manila was founded and became the capital of Spanish colony 1571. When Manila was declared the capital of the Spanish colony in 1571, marami mga mahalagang pangyayari ang nangyari sa Pilipinas. Mga ito ng kasaysayan, napalawak nito ang pamahalaang kolonyal and paglaganap ng Kristyanismo sa ating bansa. Ngayon naman, discuss natin kung ano yung mga mahalagang pangyayari noong 1571 sa Manila dito sa Pilipinas. Spanish victory at the Battle of Philippines. Dito ay matapos at pilit ipanalo nila Leader Raja Sulaiman Miguel Lopez de Legazpi kung saan nasakop ng Espanyol, pamalang Espanyol ang Pilipinas, ang Manila. Pangalawa is construction of Intramuros. Ginawa itong kuta ng mga militar ng Espanyol. Pangatlo is spread of Christianity. Dito, may mga Espanyol, mga misyonaryong Espanyol na nagpaglaganap ng Katolisismo. Sila yung unang nagturo sa atin ng salita ng Diyos. And nagpatayo rin sila ng simbahan gaya ng San Agustin. And pang-apat is starting galleon trade. Ito yung pangunahing daungan ng mga kalakalang galleon Manila. Ugnayan ng Mexico at Pilipinas. Bahagi rin yun ng Espanya. Last is occupation of the other side of Luzon. Spain used Manila as the base to expand its control over the other parts of Luzon and neighboring other islands. Ginamit ng Espanya Manila bilang sentro upang palawakin nila ang kanilang kapangyarihan dito sa Luzon at sa mga kalapit nitong lugar.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Patrick Noble, and I am going to report the Spanish introduced Catholicism, their language, and their culture to the Philippines in 16th centuries to 18th centuries. In 16th century, most of the coastal and lowland areas from Luzon to northern Mindanao were under Spanish control. Friars marched with soldiers and soon accomplished the nominal conversion to Roman Catholicism of all local people under Spanish administration. But the Muslims of Mindanao and Sulu, whom the Spanish called Moros, were never completely subdued by Spain. Early 16th centuries, the Spanish language continued to spread as the language of government, education, and commerce. Filipinos were encouraged to learn Spanish, and many adopted it as their second language. In 1609, the University of Santo Tomas, the oldest existing university in the Philippines and one of the largest Catholic universities in the world, was founded in Manila. In 1621, the Spanish language continued to spread as language of government, education, and commerce. Filipinos were encouraged to learn Spanish, and many adopted it as their second language. In 17th century, despite the effort of Spanish missionaries, indigenous beliefs and practices persisted, often blending with Catholicism. This resulted in a unique form of religious syncretism, where traditional Filipino beliefs were incorporated into Catholic practices. In 1762 to 1764, the Silang Revolt in Ilocos, led by Diego Silang, was fueled by resentment against Spanish policies and the desire for greater autonomy. This rebellion, though ultimately unsuccessful, showcased the Filipinos' determination to maintain their cultural identity. Diego Silang led the Silang Revolt in Ilocos, a rebellion against Spanish policies and a desire for greater autonomy despite its failure, showcasing Filipinos' determination to preserve their cultural identity. In 18th century, Spanish cultural influences became increasingly visible in Filipino society with the adoption of Spanish dress, food, and music. However, this assimilation was not without resistance, as Filipino often adopted Spanish cultural elements to their own traditions. Spanish cultural influences in Filipino society increased, incorporating dress, food, and music, but faced resistance as Filipinos often adopted these elements to their own traditions.